So the question that I want to start with today is, how do you feel about human equality? Do you think we should extend that to all people?
I don't think it should be extended to all people. I think it should be extended to all beings. I think animals are sentient too, and the fact that we consider humans above animals is wrong.
That is great. You're skipping a lot of steps here.
Am
This
I?
is
Sorry.
that's great. And so, what is it about people and about all sentient beings that? What is the quality of those beings that we think makes them deserve of equal rights?
Well, you caught me on a bad day in terms of defending humanity because I'm not really very happy with it right now. But I think that the compassion and community and empathy and the ability to have emotions and feel pain, that should be enough for us to be cognizant of creatures large and small, right?
Very well said. I totally agree with you. I mean, so part of it is an ability to empathize, right, with other sentient beings that can feel pain and suffering, and we know what it would feel like to be oppressed. So we believe that other humans and other animals also deserve to not be oppressed. Correct? Great. So my next question would be, does this extend to all animals or just some? Like, how do we feel about cows, chickens, pigs?
I think all animals, and I mean, I'm not going to stand here and lie to you. I'm not a vegan, so if I were truly able to internalize that, that would be the natural extension of it. I was a vegetarian for a long time, and I get the argument and largely agree with it. Also a resident of a Midwestern state who, like most people, are dependent on commercial grocery stores, so it takes an extraordinary life force to focus your life around not ever consuming anything that is a byproduct of animals.
So when you were a vegetarian, what was your main reason for going vegetarian, if you don't mind me asking?
This is way back in the day before you were born. I'm trying to think what the name of the book is, but essentially the suffering that animals are put through to be made into meat, but then also the environmental impacts. I'm from Iowa, and we don't have clean water in Iowa, in large part because of confined animal feeding operations and fertilizers being applied to farmland to grow feed for animals. So the environmental impact of a pound of ground beef is significantly more than a pound of black beans, right? Even if they're imported. So
Yeah, I believe there was just a New York Times article that came out just about that idea. If we gave up our beef and replaced it with beans,
Yep.
that we would solve the environmental crisis very quickly. Well, so you seem really informed about all of this. So I guess my next question is, what are your reasons for eating meat now? Because you said you're not
Right.
vegetarian,
I
you're
am
not
not.
vegan right
I
now.
am
So
not.
what are your reasons for continuing to eat it at this
Well,
point?
one, and we're going to dive right into gender politics, okay? I am the person in my house who cooks and cleans and does the shopping.
Me too.
And well, God love you. My husband does not like tofu, and I do not. I have a job. I don't have time to cook 2 meals. When he's on vacation, we often vacation separately. I'm all about the tofu. I prefer vegetarian food, but when I have to cook for him, I only have about an hour to get it done, and he wants pork chops. So I cook the meat. I give it to him. In fact, we just had pork chops the other day. He had a pork chop. I had a sweet potato and some broccoli because those were the sides. So that's the best I can do. I do really, I have a lot of friends that are farmers, and I really believe that local is important and supporting ethical farming is important. And I think if you're going to eat meat, you need to source your meat in a way that you at least know that that animal was well cared for and raised in open air and sunshine and all of the things that we would all want. So we actually buy grass-fed beef from a friend, and we know who is raised that animal and hopefully treated it well. So
Yeah, so the animals that you're buying don't come from like the major feedlot operations. Great. So my question for you would be, you mentioned sort of ethical meat or like ethically farmed meat. What is the ethical way to slaughter an animal? Like, how does that look?
and I think it's cultural too. I did hit the gender thing. Let's talk class and ethnicity, right? It depends. I think we have a very American perspective, and I think we are pretty privileged in this country. We waste so much food; it's obscene, right? But I think if you live in a different culture or you come from a different country, you may have a very different perspective on how an animal should be slaughtered. I don't know that killing can ever be ethical, right? Like that's a Faustian bargain.
Yeah,
I'm
I think
not
that's a tough question, right?
I don't think I can defend that.
Yeah, so can we kill an animal ethically that doesn't want to die? I guess is another.
No, kind of by definition, not.
And like, if the animal had a really good life, wouldn't you be actually kind of taking more from the animal by killing it than if the animal had like a torturous life?
See, I'm not sure I can go there. I think if you want to support a farm economy, grew up in Iowa, Wisconsin's not too dissimilar, and you want people to be able to have a right livelihood, farming can be a really good way to raise family and preserve land from urban development and sprawl and all that kind of stuff. And farming tofu has its economic limits, you know. So
what are those economic limits?
Going back to your other question, I would argue that an animal that had a good life before it was sacrificed to become food is a better option than an animal that was raised in a farrowing crate its entire life. So I don't agree that just because you're killing the animal, how it lived before that doesn't matter. I think it does.
Yeah, so a lot of what you're bringing up, I think it's interesting because I think it's from the human perspective, right? From our perspective of like,
what other
how does
perspective do I have? I'm not a cow.
Well, but if we go back to our initial comment about basic human rights or basic sentient beings, I guess I would ask you, like, in that context, you were very willing to look at it from the victim's perspective, right? So we agree that it's wrong to enslave people because we know, based on empathy and concern for the victim, that they wouldn't feel good by being enslaved because we could put ourselves in those shoes, right? Or if you do something torturous to an animal, we understand that they feel pain in the same way that we do. But when we're talking about meat, it seems like you're talking a lot about from the perpetrator's perspective, right? So if we could think about it from the animal's perspective.
It's an economic argument because we live in a capitalist system. I'm not defending it. I didn't create it, but it's a fucking fact. So if you want to change the overarching structure, then
how do we do that? How do we change?
Dude, I don't know. Believe me, I wish I did.
I have an idea for you.
It's a terrific idea.
I have an idea for you that I want to bring up.
Okay.
It's just supply and demand, right? So if we so if we stop buying it,
right,
what's going to happen to these slaughterhouses?
It's good luck with that. I wish you the very best. I do not know what to tell you. I think it's a hard push, though. I mean, please come walk a mile in rural Iowa, and you will get run out of town on a rail talking like that. It's just a sad fact. I don't disagree with you, and I mean, like I said, I gave my honey the pork chop. I didn't eat it. I like pigs. I think they're cute and smart, and I don't really want to participate in killing them, but it is an economic reality, and that enslavement of animals and that feedlot is also somebody's livelihood and is the economic vitality of an entire community. And so before you would argue that it should just be eliminated, which I think a lot of people agree with you, and I mean, I'm thoughtful and educated enough that I'm certainly willing to consider the argument. I am also cognizant of not just human impacts, but if you take away the economic vitality of a rural community, how are they going to have a wastewater treatment plant that doesn't discharge pollutants to the river? How are they going to have a school system where they raise educated, literate children that then hopefully go on to make YouTube videos about injustice in the world, right?
Can we think of...
all connected, though.
Oh, yeah, no problem. You're bringing up some really excellent points, actually. I'm really enjoying this. Can we think of any other examples in recent or not so recent history where there's been a paradigm shift or an economic shift that involved...
In this country?
Sure, in this country, where we had a large economic system based on exploitation that ended.
And where are we right now in 2017? I mean, let's talk about it, right? It's a terrific parallel, but I'm afraid we've come full circle, and we've not really, apparently as human beings or as Americans or in a democracy, learned much. We have the Ku Klux Klan marching in the street and being defended by the president. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's a terrible situation. I mean, but can we think of another...
My point would be that we thought we had kicked that, and we didn't. And so the idea that we're just going to eliminate the animal economy, animal-based economy, if you will, it's a laudable goal. But, dude, we can't even agree that it's not okay to enslave people still 200-some years later, right? So...
Is there still slavery in this country?
Fuck yes, there is. Have you seen the hotel? I mean, we're staying at the hotel around the corner, and they were having a meeting of their staff, and... You know, I'm not saying that they're employing or enslaving people, but if you're working for minimum wage in a job where you have no benefits, that's damn close to slavery in a community that you couldn't afford to live. I mean,
But is it the same as being raised as property and being sold as property into
again, I think let's return back to the gender issue. I think
basically I guess what I'm asking is have we changed at all since pre-Civil War?
I had thought we had, but boy, I've lost faith in humanity. I'm pretty depressed and unhappy about the course of things. I don't feel good about it. So.
Well, I guess this has been a really enriching conversation. I'd love to go on, but I've taken a lot of your time, and I want to let you go to your sing-along.
I know,
But
right?
what I'd like to just ask you in finishing up is, you seem to be really, you seem to be a really bold person with a lot of empathy and opinions, and that's really good. What I would ask you to consider is whether or not your actions right now are reflecting your values. And the issue about your husband and your home life, I think, is sort of a separate issue from your own personal decision about how you eat. And what I'd like you to consider is maybe the next time you're planning your meal or you're thinking about what you're doing, maybe you can make a compassionate choice. Like my mom, for instance, is vegan, and she lives with a non-vegan husband, and she eats vegan.
Make him cook for himself?
No, she actually cooks for him, and she I would say compromises because she has to. It's not her decision as to whether or not he does it. So what I would ask you is to maybe consider ways in which you could live a more compassionate life along line with your values. Would you consider doing that?
I am down with the argument, but I think, and I've been a community organizer for a long time. You're a young man. You apparently have a really big vision, and I applaud you. I will tell you from decades of experience, shame is a terrible motivator. And if that is, I'm just putting that out there.
I'm not trying to shame you.
I
hope
know that you're not, but I'm just warning you that if it is social change that you hope to realize, you have to figure out a way to get people to do it in the right vein. And it can't be, and PETA in particular, God love them, have used shame for a long time. And I in a rural economy, that's where you get run out of town on a rail. It doesn't resonate to the average person. And my husband, God knows if he were here, would say this, and I would cringe, but I'll say it on his behalf. This is why Donald Trump is president, is because we have become so binary coded in our arguments as a culture that I think the left has failed and uses a lot of shame to try and get where it's trying to go, and the recoiling of the other side has resulted in fascism in our country. And it's not your fault, but I think, and I'm a member of the left, I do take some responsibility. I think we fucked it up. And if we could go back, we should probably think about how we message and how we communicate and how we win the argument, because at the end of the day, winning the argument but losing the larger battle is not proven to be in our favor. So I'm going to go sing songs.
Thank you.